In 1 week, I stayed in a hostel with a couch surfing host, in an Airbnb, and in two hotels as I took a train trip through Europe. And I have a lot to share about each experience, and we'll share about the different types of value that you can get out of each, and how you can save the most money depending on the type of trip you are looking for. Hi, my name is Nicole. Welcome to my channel, Travel to Money. Last week, I talked about the transportation portion of my week-long trip from Spain to Switzerland to Austria and then to three cities in Italy, costing me less than $250 on flight and train tickets. If you want to check out that video, I'll be sure to put a link to it in the description of this one. Today, I want to talk to you about the experience of each of these accommodations. Now, I've stayed at hostels before, in Airbnbs, and in hotels, but this was my first time ever staying with a couch surfing host. I've talked a lot about the Couchsurfing app on my videos before, and I felt like it was time to actually give the full experience a try to really be able to let you know what I think and save some money in the process. I am a budget traveler, but I'm not going to lie, as I get older, I definitely find value in having my own space or having nice amenities, but it all depends on what you're looking for and what you value. So today I'm going to cover lots of different types of value. Maybe you value having the lowest cost option, no matter the experience. Maybe you value ease of use and good location. Maybe you value amenities and luxury. Maybe you value the ability to build relationships and have community while you travel. I'm going to help you narrow down what would be best for you as you plan your adventures. So I'm going to go in chronological order throughout my trip. I took off from Alicante, Spain on a flight to Zurich, Switzerland. This first stop was so short that I wasn't going to have time to see any of Zurich. I was arriving between 9 and 10 p.m. and then had to leave on my first train the next morning around 9 a.m. Now, I booked all of my travel through the app 80 Days. I talk a lot about it in the video from last week that I mentioned. You can receive $20 off your first booking with them if you use the code TRAVELTOMONEY. Anyhow, I booked all of the stops before I looked into lodging options. I was like, it's Europe. I'm sure I can find something reasonable in each place. Well, little did I know how expensive Switzerland is. For any hotel for just that one night, I was looking at needing to spend at least a couple $100s. I was pretty bummed out about that. I thought about couch surfing, but in general, that's not just a free place to stay. It usually also means spending time with your host and learning from them about their city. It just didn't seem respectful to use the couch surfing app when I basically just needed a place to sleep and shower. I also checked Airbnb, and the prices were super high, similar to the hotels. So I used an app that I'll link down below in the description to look for possible hostel options. I ended up booking one night in a four-bed female-only room for just over 40 US dollars. Honestly, that wasn't a bad price considering everything else in Zurich was so expensive. So the hostel I stayed at was actually more like a hotel, but the rooms just have more beds in them. The hostel was super trendy, had a massive breakfast buffet for an additional cost, had a kitchen for the hostel where you can store and cook your own food, and even a bar that opens up later in the day. The room was really nice, super clean, and I can't even tell you how comfortable the beds were. When I got to the room, I was the last to arrive, and three other young women were already there and settled in. They were super nice, but if I'm being honest, I did feel a bit out of place. I'm in my 40s, and I feel like hostels are mostly made up of younger people who are traveling. Also, even though I'm an extrovert, I'm not super comfortable starting conversations when I don't have a friend or partner to play off of. I just have a tinge of social anxiety, so that didn't feel like my favorite. I'm also the only person in the room who had a top bunk, and it was just a little tricky to navigate figuring out where to put my things since the other girls in the room had already made use of a lot of the common space. Anyhow, overall, it was a really good value for the money, and I would have a lot less hesitation if I were going with a friend. But the thing is that if you travel with two or more people, since in a hostel you're paying per person, sometimes it's actually cheaper to just get a shared hotel room or an Airbnb. I also want to quickly mention that even though I decided not to pursue couchsurfing in Zurich, I did put my dates into the couchsurfing app, and I ended up having a lot of people offer to host me, even though I was clear that I was only going to be there overnight. The couchsurfing community can be a really great resource in that way. As long as you're clear about expectations, there are a lot of generous folks out there. So, speaking of couch surfing, the next place I was heading was Innsbruck, Austria. I think at some point I looked up hotel options there, and they weren't as expensive as Switzerland, but they also weren't cheap. I had a few people from the Couchsurfing app reach out about hosting me there, and I did end up staying with a Couchsurfing host. But before I get to that, let me just briefly mention that you may get all kinds of messages on the Couchsurfing app. The first person to message me from Innsbruck is a host, but he's also a nudist. No judgment. I've seen this on the Couchsurfing app before. I need to make a whole video about Couchsurfing, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole here, but I just want to prep you that some of the hosts on the app may be a bit unconventional. The most important thing is that as a Couchsurfer, you communicate your expectations and that you find hosts who communicate their expectations well. And that's why I ended up choosing to stay with my Couchsurfing host, Thomas. Not the nudist house, just so I'm clear. Thomas made it clear that he is looking to meet travelers who he can get to know who aren't just looking for a free bed to sleep in. I thought this was perfect. I was intentionally taking time off of work on this trip, just trying to be present wherever I was. So, obviously, with something like couchsurfing, every experience is different because every host is different. So, I can't speak for every couchsurfing situation, but I just want to say how great my experience was. Thomas was a great communicator. He welcomed me, gave me a private room to stay in. We went out for dinner my first night there, and then he cooked me a lovely meal in his home the second night. He was also super flexible with me. I stayed 2 nights in Innsbruck with him, so on the full day we planned a hike. Unfortunately, I didn't have the best shoes with me and I got the worst blisters. So instead of exploring more of Innsbruck that day, he adjusted his plans for me, and that's when he made dinner for me in his home. Not only that, but the next day he provided a bus pass for me, walked me to the bus stop, then cycled to the train station to meet me there and helped me navigate getting to the right train. Honestly, his hospitality was so above and beyond. I know I list off all of the practical nice things that he did for me, but getting to know him, hear his stories about his life, and share in moments of real human vulnerability was a real privilege, and it's one of my favorite things about world travel. I had always been a bit nervous about using the Couchsurfing app, but this left me feeling like it is something I would definitely try again. Leaving Innsbruck, I was traveling to Bolzano, Italy, which is in the north of Italy, not far from Austria. This was one of the shorter train rides I took. Now, it seems to me that in all of the mountainous region, from Switzerland to Austria to northern Italy, everything is more expensive than in so many other European destinations I've traveled to. Initially, I was supposed to be staying with another couchsurfing host in Italy, but a week or so before I took off on my trip, he messaged me to say that he could no longer host me because of a protest he needed to attend in another city and because he wanted to go out and party the night that I would be there. You win some, you lose some. Anyhow, I ended up looking at hotels and Airbnb options and found the cutest Airbnb about a 45-minute walk from the train station. The cost would be 80 US dollars for one night with private accommodations. I fell in love with this little place. The building was stunning, the view was lovely, and everything was so clean. It was the perfect place for me to walk to and from, and also the perfect place to curl up with the book I was reading. I didn't want to be spending a lot on this trip, and this is more than what I would usually pay traveling through a lot of parts of Europe, especially Italy, but it seemed to be a good deal in this region, and I got a lot of value out of it. I only stayed one night in Bolzano before taking off for Venice. Now comes the issue with finding places to stay in super tourist destinations. I wasn't super comfortable with the couch surfing options that were offered to me. I did reach out to one couch surfer who seemed to be a good fit for what I was looking for, but didn't hear back. I would imagine that in those kind of super tourist cities, couch surfing hosts probably get hit up all the time. I looked into hostels, but after reading reviews about bed bugs and other not so great situations, I decided to look at Airbnb and hotel options. This ended up being the only semi splurge of the trip. There were a few decent hotels for a bit less than what I paid, but I just really loved the hotel I chose, and it had such good reviews that I knew even if the price was a little bit more, I'd get so much more value out of it. So this one ended up being 140 US dollars. I was so impressed with this hotel. Aesthetically, it was my favorite place that I stayed on the trip. I loved the brick wall, the wooden beams, and there's just something really special about opening your window to the canal in Venice. Charming is definitely the word I'd use to describe it. I came and went from the hotel several times. When I checked out, they were able to hold my bags for me for free. All in all, with such a short stay in Venice, I'm glad I paid to stay centrally and in a place that really made me comfortable. The last leg of my trip took me to Rome, but this time I wasn't going to be doing anything in the city. I just had an overnight stay and then had to get to the airport early the next morning for my flight back to the US. Similar to Zurich, I did have several people offer to host me, but considering I didn't really have time to hang out and I had to be up for the airport super early, I knew it would be best to get a hotel. The place ended up reminding me more of an Airbnb, like a condo in a neighborhood where each of the 8 rooms are managed somewhat like a hotel. I paid right around €62 for one night, which wasn't bad, and honestly, the place was really cute. The only mistake I made was that on the app, the hotel looked pretty close to the airport, but in reality, even though it was close in comparison to where the city of Rome is to the airport, it would have still been over an hour walk, which was further than I realized. The cabs to get to and from the airport ended up being almost as expensive as my one night stay. I just wonder if I couldn't have paid $100 to be right at the airport instead of dealing with the cab hassle just to stay a bit cheaper. Anyway, all of my stays in total for 6 nights traveling around Europe came to 325 US dollars. If you remember from the video last week, all of my transportation for the flight to Zurich and my trains to each city came to a total of 229 US dollars. So my grand total for transportation and accommodation for 6 nights and 7 days traveling around Europe came to $554. Now, that total doesn't include whatever I spent on meals and things like the cab rides I just mentioned. There wasn't a lot of that, but I probably spent another $250 on the items like food and extra transport. Anyhow, I hope this has really been helpful for you. I do want to ask you to subscribe, like this video, and join me every day where travel and adventure build financial freedom. I can't wait to see where your dreams will take you.